We heard this morning that the youth unemployment rate is almost double that of the adult population. And when you look at underemployment, it's about 70%. I had the opportunity to sit on a panel recently in my country, in Ghana, and we were looking at statistics along youth employment. And whereas for many young people between 15 and 35, about 50% said that they were self-employed. Those who were employed to the extent where they had been able to employ one other young person was about 2 to 3%. So there's still a lot to be said about, the potential that we have to tap into in terms of helping young people who get into entrepreneurship, who start their own initiatives on how they can bring it to scale, how they can involve other young people. So there's a lot to be said on what government can do. And I don't want to take too much of our time going over these. So I'm going to open the floor. I think it would be safe if we spend 10 to 15 minutes on each of the issues, just reminding ourselves of what we think are the critical areas to focus on. And then we shall spend the remainder of the time, about an hour or so, on recommendations. I imagine we will have more than 3 in the beginning, and then hopefully we can prioritize towards the end. So I shall open the floor now, and please make sure that your comment is straight to the point so that other people can also voice their concerns. It would be great if you have a name plaque or something that would help. But otherwise, gentleman here, lady there, I saw you third. So 1, 2, 3, and then let's move on from there. Yeah?
Merci, Monsieur le Chair, de me passer la parole. J'aimerais revenir une fois de plus sur une des préoccupations que j'ai soulevées un peu plus tôt en journée, mais de manière plus concrète. Cette préoccupation va dans le cadre justement des gouvernements pour pouvoir assurer un emploi décent aux jeunes. Nous savons tous que c'est le secteur privé majoritairement qui crée des emplois. Cependant, le gouvernement doit mettre un environnement favorable pour cette création d'emplois. Alors, ma recommandation serait simplement que les gouvernements mettent sur pied des pactes fiscaux qui donnent des allègements fiscaux aux entreprises, mais en contrepartie, ces entreprises doivent pouvoir créer des emplois pour les jeunes. Alors, pourquoi cela? Simplement, on a une situation où on a beaucoup d'entreprises étrangères qui viennent sur le continent pour exploiter nos ressources, mais malheureusement, on se retrouve encore dans une situation où on doit importer de la main-d'œuvre. Je prends le cas des Chinois qui gagnent beaucoup de marchés en Afrique, mais malheureusement, on se rend compte que la majorité de la main-d'œuvre employée, c'est une main-d'œuvre chinoise. L'idée du pacte serait donc de dire à ces entreprises, si vous venez et on vous accorde des concessions minières, on vous accorde des allègements fiscaux, vous devez en contrepartie développer des programmes qui visent par exemple à former les jeunes qui sont dans les localités minières pour que ces jeunes soient employés dans ces mines. Donc, pacte fiscal assorti d'une responsabilité de l'entreprise de pouvoir créer des emplois qui vont majoritairement bénéficier aux jeunes. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. Just as I said earlier, it would be great if we all stick straight to the point. Not to say that was too long, but okay, so number 2 and then number 3.
Good afternoon. My name's Tambra Stevenson. I founded Native Soul Kitchen, and I'm based in Washington, D.C. I wanted to first open up my recommendations that I prepared in advance to provide today with my observations here in Addis. While visiting communities in Addis Ababa, I had a chance to speak to Ethiopian youth, and I was astonished when I asked what their favorite foods are. I was told pizza, hamburger, fries, and for drinks, I was informed soft drinks and fruit juices, not injera, not their vegetables. And of course, anyone would think a 7-year-old, like many adults, would say that's normal. But if you were to ask my little 4-year-old boy what's his favorite food, he would say strawberries and oranges. Now, why does this matter? For job readiness, we need a sharp mind. You heard Sir Pop mention about that. And to have a sharp mind, it helps to create new, latest innovations. You need a nice smile because of good dental teeth when you seal a business deal. And you need a strong body to handle the constant travel as a business person. And if anyone doubts, ask Baba, our elders, about pains and aches and high blood pressure and blood sugar from imbalanced life and lifestyle. We've seen the impact of AIDS in Africa, and the next wave will be lifestyle-related diseases. And Africa must believe the value of its health is as valuable as its wealth. And this begins with knowing and using our African heritage foods as medicine, and that diabetes is not a part of our heritage, and our foods reinforce our identity, our pride, our heritage, and our strength. And we have to have the power to reclaim all the use of our heritage as our guide on the journey. Therefore, I recommend a number of things to be put in place as we see that with the West and the East expanding into Africa, there will be opportunities, and with those opportunities come consequences, such as adopting a Western lifestyle. Therefore, my recommendations that provide youth opportunities include: 1, preserving African heritage foods by establishing a seed bank here in Africa, developing a comprehensive database of nutrient composition of African heritage foods, case in point, the UN Foods database system. Teach young people the benefits of African heritage foods nutritionally and economically, such as Senegal just had an opportunity with Chinese to put in manufacturing equipment to produce peanut oil that will be shipped into China, and they've received a 10-fold increase in economics that's only helping Senegal even more. 4th, create a cross-cultural culinary exchange of African heritage foods among the youth, with conversations sharing a pan-African cuisine to show the solidarity among our youth. 5, invest in youth training, employment, and entrepreneurship in the supply chain of agriculture, nutrition, culinary training, food establishments, and food production specializing in African heritage foods. And 6, create an integrated system that includes the sectors of agriculture, health, and food preparation. And 7, provide community nutrition education and preparation to families and youth focused on African heritage foods through hands-on and online instruction. 8, create a campaign with key influential leaders and youth as influencers promoting the benefits of African heritage foods. And 9, build an infrastructure that supports African heritage foods produced and exchanged within the African diaspora, as what was mentioned once again by Sir Pop about understanding our connection across the Americas, the Caribbean, and here the continent. And lastly, develop the curriculum and nutrition education counseling skills within the academic departments of universities, such as in hospitality, culinary, arts, nutrition, and agriculture, that incorporates African heritage foods in preparing the next future of chefs, nutritionists, and dietitians and restaurateurs, as we understand that when you eat your heritage, you also overthrow the sense of food imperialism that is happening every time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It would be good if you can share those recommendations, if you have them written down.
Yes, I
with the rapporteurs. And you have 10 recommendations in your brief presentation, so hopefully we'll be able to merge some of them in moving forward. Who was our number 3? I believe it was this side, and then we'll take a new cycle.
Merci à tous. Moi, c'est Papa Modouba du Sénégal. J'aimerais juste intervenir sur 3 points concernant l'employabilité des jeunes en Afrique de manière générale. La première chose qu'on a remarqué pour une étude en Afrique de l'Ouest avec le cabinet d'Alberg, c'est que 90% sur l'échantillon d'une étude qu'on avait fait sur 100% des chefs d'entreprise, 90% disent que les jeunes sont bien formés dans les universités. Ce qui leur manque, c'est les life skills et les soft skills. En d'autres termes, en français, ce qu'on appelle habileté professionnelle, habileté managériale, compétences, bonnes compétences et tenue en entreprise. Ça, c'est la première chose. Ça, c'est un constat. Comment aujourd'hui faire? La première recommandation, c'est de renforcer les life skills des jeunes diplômés afin de les permettre d'être opérationnels dès qu'ils arrivent en entreprise. Ça, c'est la première recommandation. La deuxième recommandation que je donnerai, c'est de promouvoir, que l'État puisse aider à assainir le secteur, faire la promotion des PME-PMI. Ne nous trompons pas. Les multinationales, ce qui les intéresse, c'est le business, c'est faire du profit. Ils n'ont pas de temps à perdre avec des jeunes diplômés à qui ils vont former. Alors, il faut stimuler le développement des PME-PMI pour pouvoir, en fait, donner une marge d'emploi à des jeunes qui sont prêts, qui viennent de sortir d'école de commerce, qui puissent intégrer le marché. Et la dernière des choses, c'est très simple, c'est l'allègement des taxes, l'allègement de tout ce qui est frais pour le privé, la stimulation de l'investissement étranger qui va permettre à d'autres investisseurs de venir dans le pays, pouvoir créer des entreprises, pouvoir donner du travail aux jeunes diplômés. Si on arrive à gérer ces trois facteurs-là, je pense que dans beaucoup de pays, le taux de chômage peut drastiquement baisser et que les jeunes puissent avoir accès à un premier emploi ou un premier stage. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Merci. Pouvez-vous turn off microphone? Okay. So 1, 2 just behind you. So Cameroon, I think that's, I can't see which country it's. Nigeria? Okay, so Cameroon, Nigeria. You, I don't know which country. Number 4, number 5, the lady in green, and then we will take a new round. I will be awarding points for brevity, so. Cameroun.
Je m'appelle Steve Roland et Togo du Cameroun. Mon intervention va se axer sur l'âge de la retraite. Je pense qu'aujourd'hui, on remarque que les jeunes n'ont pas d'emploi parce que les personnes qui travaillent ne vont pas rapidement à la retraite. Donc, il faudrait qu'on réfléchisse sur un système qui va nous permettre de ramener l'âge de la retraite à, on va dire, peut-être 55 ans pour que les gens aillent rapidement en retraite pour qu'on puisse recruter. On puisse recruter. C'est très important. Merci.
Thank you very much. So remember in the morning, I will be going through the major issues that we are looking at briefly, but I think he touched on one aspect of the issues that we're looking at in the morning. 1, job creation at country level, and then 2, a fundamental transformation of education for employment. And I think that would be one of many things we can do to create employment. I'm not sure how we will go about that, but good points nonetheless. So before I give the floor to Nigeria, I'm just running through the issues once again, just so we do not box in ourselves. Effectiveness of youth employment policies and actions. Who in government is responsible for youth employment? This is for government policies, but feel free to think beyond that, even in terms of what government can do to, with private sector and others. Now, the second one on employability. Mismatch between labor market demand and skills supply, quality of education in producing skills, role of labor market information systems and observatories in forecasting skills needed. So these are just some of the issues that we hope to touch on. By all means, feel free to go beyond them, but just so we remind ourselves of where we are. Nigeria.
My intervention is on the educational system, and I'm hoping that my suggestion actually is the change of the curriculum, the entire curriculum system. Our vision as Africans has been tainted by a continuous quest to structure the continent to be like the West. We continuously lose our identity as Africans and mistake modernization for Westernization. We need to channel the next generation of Africans to be creative and modern as Africans, not a replica or a clone of the Western ideals. One of the ways of achieving this is through the complete overhaul of our learning and educational system. All African educationists must come together to create a new curricula suited to address the peculiarities of Africans. Number 1, we must educate our continent, bearing in mind that the overall goal is to channel its resources and manpower in a way that creativity and individuality is greatly encouraged. We must create a curriculum that allows for each African child to be unique but enlightened. Each African head of state will agree to implement this in their varied states and also dedicate a certain percentage, I would recommend up to about 40% of its annual budget towards education and building capabilities. By encouraging creativity, we would in turn have a crop of Africans who are innovators, job creators, and the quest for migration and job seeking will be reduced to the barest minimum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just summing up, tuning education to meet national development needs, but also taking in consideration labor market needs. I see also that you're making a point on increased funding for education. I'm not quite sure how 40% will go, since we are still pushing them on 15% with health, but I think, you know, we can see where you're going with that. All right, so who was the third person? Number 3? Okay, so please identify yourself and move on.
My name is Betty from AUC. I would like to emphasize more in education system, like my sister from Nigeria just spoken. And for me, I think skills is more important, because you can study up to master's level, and then if you cannot write a simple project proposal, it doesn't make sense. So I think the government should emphasize more in training skills and to change the education system whereby even if I finish second school, I will be able even to write my own CV or to write an essay. But in our generation, you find that someone reach up to a master level, but when it comes to the job market, it's zero. It's like he didn't even go to school. So I think we need to talk to our government to emphasize in skill training. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you too, and I'd like to remind you also that we're looking at government policies, but it would be good if we're thinking in terms of what government has to do directly, what the private sector has to do, and what we also as young people want to do, and how government policies can create that enabling environment for that. So thank you very much. I think you're talking there also about the quality and the relevance of education. We're not taking new hands now, so I'm still going by the numbers. That was number 3. Who is number 4? I think you were 5, so I'm trying to identify 4. Anyway, okay. Oh, yes, there we go.
Je vous remercie. On dit Roland Nzingi Nzingi de l'Union panafricaine de la jeunesse. Comme je l'ai mentionné ce matin, c'est que le diagnostic sur l'emploi des jeunes est connu et nos chefs d'État et de gouvernement sont suffisamment informés sur l'ensemble des stratégies. Le vrai problème aujourd'hui, et ce qui pourrait être une recommandation forte, c'est de demander et d'interpeller nos chefs d'État de quitter le stade incantatoire des idées et à l'action. Ça, c'est très important parce qu'il faut désormais qu'ils respectent leurs engagements. Et ces engagements peuvent être respectés par la mise en place non seulement des politiques appropriées sur l'emploi des jeunes, mais également d'un système de statistiques qui doit permettre à ceux qu'ils puissent avoir un diagnostic sur les statistiques de l'emploi, parce que ça aussi c'est ce qui manque. On ne sait pas combien de jeunes sont au chômage dans nos pays. À cela s'ajoute également la mise en place des centres incubateurs, qui sont des pépinières d'entreprises qui permettent ici la facilitation d'auto-entrepreneuriat en milieu jeunesse. Autre point, c'est la mise en place d'un fonds. Donc le fonds à l'entrepreneuriat, à l'insertion des jeunes. Je pense que si de tels programmes sont mis en place, ce serait facile. Et j'adhère à l'idée de la mise en place de au moins 40% du budget entre l'éducation et l'emploi au niveau de l'Afrique. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Number 5.
I think I'll just be very brief because the 2 last ladies have touched on the points I wanted to touch on. But I'll be very specific to the question that asked about the policies, the government policies that can be created and how they can help with employability. I think governments should, there should be, through public-private partnerships, there should be incentives put in place for companies that provide apprenticeships. And I'd like to specifically bring you to, there's this concept called job shadowing, which I think can be started right after high school, so that the young kids can get an idea of what they can study when they get to the university. It gives them a feel of what the employment market needs, so they can get a feel of what they can study in order to meet what the employment market needs. So I guess maybe we should look more into this job shadowing concept and then see if there can be public-private partnerships created to make that possible.
Thank you very much. So we are going to take what I hope will be a last round of general comments, and then from there we'll start. Ooh, this is going to be tough. Okay, so we haven't picked anyone from this side of the room, so I will prioritize them and pick. Is that a UNF? Are you from UNFPA? Okay, so 1, and then 2 at the back. I see a couple more hands here. Let's see what we can do. Let's move here into the middle. But also, if you have key issues and you're not picked, you can put them on a paper and share with the rapporteurs, and they'll still incorporate it. So I picked 2 here. Gentleman there at the back, and maybe a lady, the one in the black top with their hand up. Malawi. From here, someone rooting for Burkina Faso, so yes, Burkina Faso and South Africa. Let's see where we are at with this, but if we each stick to maybe a minute or 2, then maybe more people can speak. So.
Merci. Depuis longtemps, on est en train de parler. Je crois qu'il y a 2 aspects que je voudrais souligner. C'est Octavio Diogo du Bénin. Il y a 2 aspects que je voulais souligner. Le premier, c'est la gouvernance économique. Les 2 piliers sur lesquels je mets l'employabilité et les politiques du gouvernement en ce qui concerne la création de l'emploi sont d'abord la gouvernance économique, ce qui va permettre aux entreprises, ce qui va permettre de créer un environnement favorable à ce que les entreprises puissent investir, à ce que d'autres jeunes aussi puissent initier leur entreprise, et donc le climat économique serait amélioré. Et ça, par exemple, c'est déjà contenu dans la charte africaine de la gouvernance, des élections et de la démocratie, précisément au chapitre 9, je crois qu'il parle des articles 31, 32, 33. Donc, si les États arrivaient à ratifier cette charte et à l'exécuter, on aurait plus d'entreprises qui seraient créées, on aurait plus de jeunes qui pourraient avoir l'initiative et aller de l'avant, donc on pourrait faire beaucoup de choses. Deuxième chose, c'est à propos de ce qu'on appelle en anglais les TVET, Technical Educational Vocational Training, donc les centres de formation vocationnelle. Moi, quand je parle de jeunesse, je ne vois pas ceux qui sont ici. Parce que dans beaucoup de pays africains, il n'y a que 5% de personnes qui sont allées à l'école, 10% de personnes. Alors qu'est-ce qu'on fait de la grande masse? Ceux qui sont dans les villages. Si on doit parler de l'amélioration du système d'éducation, ça n'a pas de sens pour ces gens du village. Mais lorsque nous parlons des Technical Vocational Educational Training, des centres de formation vocationnelle, on parle de ces grands nombres de personnes. Et si l'État doit prendre une politique, il a déjà au niveau de l'Union africaine, la stratégie des TVET 2015, actuellement c'est en train d'être révisé, UNHCR a donné un peu d'argent pour ça. Donc si on appesantit beaucoup plus l'accent sur les centres de formation vocationnelle, on va engranger le plus grand nombre de jeunes en termes d'emploi, on va permettre l'innovation en termes le truc de création, on va investir alors aisément au niveau de l'agriculture. Et la dernière condition, c'est qu'il faut que ces centres de formation vocationnelle centres de formation TVET centers soient dirigés par le secteur privé. Ce n'est pas l'État. L'État n'a rien en termes de compétences. Mais lorsqu'on parle des privés, ils sont capables de savoir ce qu'il nous faut. Ils sont capables de savoir quelles sont les skills, quelles sont les aptitudes dont ces jeunes-là ont besoin pour leur être utiles. Donc je vois que 2 points, gouvernance économique et private sector led TVET centers in agriculture to foster the innovation and whatever. That is, those are the 2 points that I want to make. Thanks.
Thank you very much. TVET is Technical Vocational Education and Training. I know it's easy to get lost in the jargons every now and then, so if you bring the acronyms, try to expand them so we all understand. So yes, Technical Vocational Education and Training, and then you also talked about the issue of ratification of the charter, which I think is extremely important. All right, second person from this side, I think was someone in the back.
Sure. My name is Martin Bai. I'm an entrepreneur from Kenya. I'd like to offer 3 thoughts, all focused at the systemic level. Building on my colleague's earlier point, vocational learning is quite important, but I would recommend, particularly to the leaders who will be here tomorrow, to consider relaxing the need for certification. Rather than students having to get certificates, can they instead demonstrate their skills? And that's keeping in mind increased access at the primary level has led to a lot of graduates. and the need to increase the number of universities has gotten rid of a lot of TVET vocational institutions. So presidents have an opportunity to set up a high bar that can increase supply at the vocational level. The second point, and this will be a challenge to presidents also, is to focus on establishing national projects and regional projects. I'll pick Kenya, my country, as an example. We are building something called the Lapset Corridor, a road that is supposed to move from the coastal town of Lamu and go all the way north to the border with Turkana, Ethiopia. It's quite easy for the government to set a 5 to 10-year capacity building projection, which then determines the need for what training should be. So if that can be replicated among the other East African countries and other regional economic communities, I think there's an opportunity to make training be in direct touch with what happens in classrooms. And then the third area is around harmonizing regional education systems. Again, I have Kenya and East Africa in mind. To the extent graduates can start primary school in Nairobi, go to high school in Bujumbura, finish university in Kampala, and maybe take additional courses in Dar es Salaam, and even extending to Addis Ababa. Presidents have a unique opportunity working through their ministries of science and technology to establish a broader framework around which that kind of interplay can happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we're moving now to the middle part where we had two speakers. So it was you and then a lady from Malawi, I suppose.
OK. Merci de me passer la parole. Je suis Kameni du Cameroun. J'ose croire que l'ambition de ce forum est de se démarquer des forats précédents où nous venons nous asseoir et nous paierons en termes de il faut, et au sortir de ça, aucune proposition concrète n'en ressort. Si nous voulons faire des propositions concrètes, quand j'entends par exemple des gens dire il faut réformer le système éducatif, croyez-moi, je vous assure, c'est trop paresseux de dire qu'il faut réformer le système éducatif. Il faut aller dans le système éducatif et identifier ce qui ne va pas. Et au sortir de là avec des propositions concrètes. Je vous prends un exemple, par exemple, dans mon pays, le Cameroun, vous allez voir des gens qui se tapent la poitrine en vous disant « j'ai un Master 2 en francophonie et mondialisation ». Je me demande bien à quoi un gars qui a un Master 2 en francophonie et mondialisation nous sera utile. Je ne sais pas quelle compétence il acquiert dans quel domaine qui sera utile au développement de l'Afrique. Quand on parle de réformer le système éducatif, il faut identifier ce qui ne va pas. Nos universités aujourd'hui sont des usines de production de chômeurs. Je vous prends encore l'exemple du Cameroun. On a 5 facultés d'où sortent environ chaque année 8000 étudiants. Et vous savez que pour les facultés de droit, le principal chemin que vous devez suivre, c'est forcément, je ne sais pas, comment vous appelez, une formation d'avocat, un métier d'avocat. Vous avez 8000 étudiants qui sortent des facultés chaque année et vous lancez le concours du barreau tous les 5 ans pour prendre moins de 500 étudiants. Qu'est-ce que vous faites des autres? Donc, je voudrais que nous sortions d'ici avec des propositions concrètes. Quand on parle de politique publique, politique gouvernementale d'emploi des jeunes, ne nous voilons pas les yeux. Si vous n'avez pas été invité pendant l'élaboration de la politique publique, une politique publique, elle s'élabore, elle se met en œuvre, elle s'évalue. Ne croyez pas que c'est pendant qu'elle sera évaluée que vous allez être invité. Ce que les jeunes, nous devons faire, c'est chercher à intégrer les instances où les politiques publiques sont définies pour faire entendre notre voix. Parce que croyez-moi, on va s'asseoir ici à 10, on va écrire nos recommandations, on va envoyer au chef d'État. Quand ils vont s'asseoir pour drafter leur politique publique, rien des résolutions que nous avons prises ici ne seront intégrées. Ce que nous devons faire, c'est nous engager en politique, rejoindre les instances décisionnelles où ces choses-là se décident et faire entendre notre voix. Sinon, ce genre de fora, ce sera comme à l'accoutumée, on viendra pérorer et au sortir d'ici, il n'y aura pas de proposition concrète. J'en ai terminé, merci.
Okay, so you've just come to an end with that submission, but I need to ask you a follow-up question because this is actually an issue that we've been discussing for some time, and if you've been here last year in all the discussions around the ICPD a week ago in Dakar, I think it is quite clear what the problem is. There have been so many studies that are saying that the education as it is now is not giving the young people who pass through them the skills with which they can be competitive and get immediately absorbed into the job market. So I think that is why there are all those recommendations around making sure that education responds to labor market needs, etc. Young people getting critical thinking skills and things like that. So if you are saying that the recommendations have to be more specific, what do you mean?
Si vous permettez, monsieur le modérateur, je dis plus spécifique parce que une proposition selon laquelle il faut réformer le système éducatif, ce n'est pas une proposition. Dites dans quel secteur il faut réformer le système, dans quel délai et dans quelle filière. Quelles filières doivent être peut-être mises à jour, quelles filières doivent être ajoutées. On a beaucoup, aujourd'hui en Afrique, la plupart de nos États ont des ressources minières et pétrolières et autres. Mais combien avons-nous d'instituts de facultés qui forment des ingénieurs dans ces domaines? On a des sociologues, on a des littéraires, on a je ne sais pas, beaucoup de choses. Voilà, on n'a jamais vu un sociologue construire une route. On n'a jamais vu un littéraire, je ne sais pas moi, construire un pont quelque part. Qu'est-ce que nous en faisons? Des propositions concrètes et chiffrables. On dit, au sortir d'ici, dans 20 ans, on veut tel nombre d'ingénieurs dans tel domaine, dans tel nombre de pays. Voilà des choses auxquelles on doit s'attaquer concrètement. Au lieu de rester dans des termes génériques, il faut. Merci.
Thank you very much. So interesting recommendations coming from across the room. And I had to follow up on that because it's an issue that I think all of us have been grappling with for a long time. We know what the problem is. And this is why I was asking all the how questions at the beginning. How do we do this? How do we implement the things that we are saying? So personally, and this is just my opinion, I do not think it is so much an issue of whether sociology or arts is important. I think it is beyond that in terms of the content of all the things that people study. Even from primary level, secondary level, tertiary level, how do we progressively equip young people so that at every stage they're moving closer and closer to becoming more competitive, more equipped to be in the job market. So good point. And very soon after this round, we'll come to our rapporteurs to see what the issues that have been raised are. And then now we'll have to go into more concrete recommendations. So that was number 3, and Malawi now has the floor.
So thank you. I'm Rasida Tukonate from African Leadership Academy. Okay, so nowadays, to solve the problem of youth employment in Africa, leaders focus on the formal sector, whereas the informal sector is the one which actually absorbs the largest part of the youth. So what I recommend is to focus also on the informal sector. Why not develop it? I mean, leaders can value the informal sector. They can create, the government can create a department which will be in charge of the sector to organize it and to make it more profitable. For example, by teaching the people who actually work in it how to get the best of the activity. They could also, yeah, basically. I think the informal sector is the one where we have the most youth in Africa. So if we spend our time focusing on the formal one, whereas we don't have effective results from now. So why not focus also on the one where we can touch the largest part? Is what I think. If the transition is hard from informal sector to formal sector, I think leaders could try to make a bit formal the informal sector.
Thank you very much. Which country are you from?
Burkina Faso.
Haha. All right. So now, and I had already given Burkina Faso. Now I'm feeling conflicted now. Anyway, I had already given Burkina. So on account of this, make it very brief, and then we'll come to South Africa and take the wrap-up from the rapporteurs.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Il y a beaucoup de recommandations qui sont revenues, et je remercie mon ami Kameni Ngankam du Cameroun qui a dit que quand vous dites on va réformer le système, ça veut dire quoi? Je vais vous dire une chose. Demain, demandons aux chefs d'État de former ceux dont ils ont besoin. S'ils pensent... Je vais vous prendre l'exemple du Congo. Le Congo est un potentiel hydraulique le plus important de l'Afrique. Demandez au président Denis Sassou Nguesso de former, je vous en prie, des spécialistes en exploitation de ressources hydrauliques. Ça sera important pour le Congo dans les années à venir. Ça, c'est un point. Pour l'éducation, ils n'ont qu'à former ceux dont ils ont besoin. S'ils ne forment pas ceux dont ils ont besoin, demain, ils se retrouveront face à une économie où ils n'auront pas de la ressource pour exploiter. Ça, c'est le premier point. Et sur le deuxième point, en termes de politique et stratégie, je vous en prie, on a déjà des politiques, on a déjà des stratégies. Combien de pays n'ont pas ratifié la Charte africaine de la jeunesse? Combien de pays n'ont pas implémenté ce qu'on appelle la décade de la jeunesse? Je vous en prie, demandez au chef d'État, s'il vous plaît, si vous venez vous asseyez dans un sommet, vous prenez l'engagement, allez à la maison et signez. La présidente Johnson Sirleaf nous a dit, je veux d'abord savoir les implications de cette Charte africaine de la jeunesse avant de signer. Ça fait combien de temps qu'elle cherche à savoir les implications? Si elle a besoin d'éclairage, qu'elle nous appelle, on va l'éclairer. Ça, c'est le deuxième point. Je vous en prie, il faut que les gens ratifient. Et quand ils ratifient, ils repartent à la maison. Il faut qu'ils soient clairs qu'ils doivent travailler là-dessus. Mon ami Octavio du Bénin est venu avec quelque chose de très important, que le Kenya, l'entrepreneur du Kenya, a insisté. Je voulais vous proposer ce projet. Demandez au chef d'État ceci. Beaucoup de jeunes sont en dehors du système scolaire. On a parlé de technical vocational training, something like this. I'm not specialist in English, but let me tell you something. Il y a des gens. Quels sont ceux qui sont les coiffeurs dans nos quartiers? Ce sont des gens qui sont allés à l'école, qui n'ont pas réussi et qui sont sortis. Après, on leur dit, OK, comme tu n'as pas réussi à l'école, va apprendre à coudre. Quels sont ceux qui sont les tresses, les filles qui se sont fait tresser dans cette salle? Quels sont ceux qui les ont tressés? Ce ne sont pas des gens qui ont des doctorats en tresse. Non, ce sont des gens qui sont allés à l'école, qui n'ont pas réussi. Et on dit, bon, comme tu n'as pas réussi, va apprendre à coiffer. Les menuisiers du quartier, le mécanicien du quartier. Alors, nous, on a expérimenté ça dans une région au Burkina Faso. On a récolté ces gens-là. On les a mis dans un système. Puisque le gouvernement demande papier, OK, on les a formés pendant 3 ans. Quand on a fini de les former pendant 3 ans, on a demandé à l'État d'organiser un certificat, un examen de qualification professionnelle. Ils ont été qualifiés professionnellement parce qu'ils savent le faire. Et c'est ce genre de projet que je voudrais que les chefs d'État expérimentent chez eux. S'il vous plaît, demandez-leur demain de faire ça.
Merci beaucoup.
So because these industries cannot, they're drying out and they cannot consume these people anymore, it causes even more bigger problem because there's nothing as frustrating as being a graduate that's unemployed because you think you've got the skill and you're just waiting for an opportunity. I think we need to bring in professionals in education system and we need to consider the issue of probably employing psychologists in our education system in primary and secondary level. In which will assist people, the student, in determining the skill. Because also we have a huge number of dropouts in varsities because of the wrong career choices, which is costing us a whole lot of money already invested into that. So to avoid that wastage, we need to involve psychologists into the education system, whereby they assess your skills, because there's no point in doing accounting if you can't do maths. You don't know how to do it. It's not your skill. Rather communication, rather something that you're good at. So if we don't involve the people who are able to actually analyze the skill at a lower level, then we risk having that huge number of dropouts. And sometimes parents don't even have money to take them back to school. It causes more frustration. And then also, one more thing that I want to talk about is on how government reviews how government reviews measures education statistics. Usually you find that the people who starts lower level are not the one that actually finishes secondary level, but then government judges measures as to how many people passed, and that measures whether people are educated or not educated. What happens to the number of people that actually drop out along the way? That is not measured, and that becomes our problem as this generation.
Thank you very much. I'd give the floor now to Obain, who will share with us key issues that he's noted from the discussion so far. If you've made some recommendations that you think were not, have not jumped off their papers, put it on paper and then bring it to us and we'll see how we can incorporate it. Obain.
Alors, je pense que cette première partie a été quand même un peu fructueuse. Et les recommandations qui s'y dégagent tournent autour de quelques 5 à 6 points, fondamentalement. Alors, le premier point, c'est que le gouvernement crée un cadre institutionnel favorable. Et quand on parle de cadre institutionnel favorable, il y a les points suivants que nous pouvons y dégager. Premièrement, les allègements fiscaux. Donc, il va falloir que les gouvernements de nos pays puissent quand même fixer à des taux normaux et favorables, donc tout ce qu'il y a comme impôts, tout ce qu'il y a comme taxes pour les entreprises, pour stimuler la création donc, de nouvelles entreprises, surtout dans le secteur privé. Et relativement à cela, en contrepartie, il va falloir donc valoriser la main-d'œuvre locale, C'est-à-dire, il ne s'agira pas de fermer les frontières, mais également être ouvert aux entreprises étrangères, mais avec la contrepartie qu'elles doivent forcément utiliser la main-d'œuvre locale. Un autre point, c'est qu'il faut développer les PME. Il ne faut pas vouloir rapidement grandir, c'est-à-dire créer de grandes entreprises qui seront internationalement compétitives ou affirmantes. Mais il faut commencer par les petites et les moyennes entreprises, qui forcément donc, seront dirigées par des jeunes. Une autre chose qui figure dans le cadre institutionnel, c'est le budget. Le budget qu'il faut accorder à la jeunesse et à l'emploi. Et beaucoup de personnes ont proposé 40%. Une dernière chose, c'est l'âge à la retraite, donc, que quelqu'un a proposé. Il a dit de ramener donc, cet âge-là à 55 ans. Bon, la question que je voulais poser, c'est la moyenne actuellement, c'est de combien? Je n'en sais rien. Pardon? Ok, pour aller vite. Alors, deuxièmement, la grande recommandation qui se dégage des discussions est autour donc, des politiques. Alors, beaucoup de gens ont soulevé la question du respect des engagements. Il y a beaucoup de stratégies, il y a beaucoup de schémas, il y a beaucoup de politiques, que ce soit nationales ou continentales ou aussi régionales, qui existent déjà, mais soit elles ne sont pas ratifiées, soit elles sont ratifiées, adoptées et tout, mais les gouvernants donc, ne respectent pas les engagements qu'ils ont pris ou que véhiculent ces principaux documents-là. Donc il va falloir faire un plaidoyer pour que les acteurs politiques gouvernementaux puissent respecter les engagements quand ils les prennent. Voilà, en matière de politique également, il y a beaucoup qui ont proposé de renforcer le partenariat public-privé, donc pour accompagner les gouvernements dans les différentes politiques, dans la mise en œuvre des différentes politiques. Une autre chose qui a émergé, c'est les infrastructures. Il va falloir également investir dans les infrastructures nationales et transnationales également. Et je pense qu'il y a un Kenyan qui a bien détaillé cela. L'autre grand point, ou gros point si vous voulez, c'est autour donc de l'éducation. Des réformes qui doivent avoir lieu au niveau de l'éducation. Et la grande question qui m'est restée à l'esprit, qui me reste derrière à l'esprit, c'est quel genre de personnes nous voulons former. Et si on arrive à répondre à cette question, il va falloir maintenant adapter le système éducatif africain ou de nos différentes nations donc, à ce résultat-là, cette réponse-là. Et quelqu'un a parlé d'harmonisation. Il ne suffira pas seulement d'avoir un système éducatif pour le Bénin, pour le Togo et pour le Ghana. Il va falloir donc s'asseoir et définir quel programme, ou bien, quel programme d'enseignement, quel programme d'éducation nous voulons pour les Africains, tout simplement. Et je pense, pour ajouter quelque chose, nous avons déjà le CAMES qui est là et qui peut travailler là-dessus. Je pense que c'est les grandes recommandations qui ressortent, mais il y a quand même une autre recommandation que je ne vais pas laisser tomber, c'est par rapport à la santé. Et il va falloir également investir dans l'alimentation et dans la nutrition, dans la bonne alimentation et dans la bonne nutrition, pour pouvoir avoir vraiment des masses productives, parce que, rappelez-vous, ressources humaines est différent de capital humain. Vous pouvez avoir 1000 hommes, mais ils peuvent peut-être ne rien faire, alors qu'un seul homme peut faire peut-être quelque chose de plus grand. C'est là donc qu'il faut faire la différence. Les économistes font la différence entre ressources humaines. Vous pouvez avoir beaucoup de ressources humaines, mais le capital humain peut être faible. Donc il va falloir également alimenter pour pouvoir vraiment renforcer le capital humain que nous voulons pour pouvoir développer donc, économiquement ce continent. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. So Michael will also add on notes that he has taken from his side. And what I encourage you is to take note of the issues that they have raised or would have raised by the end. And if the issues that you wanted to raise have still not been raised, then we will give an opportunity for you to raise them. So if the issues have already been captured generally, we will be coming to how we will put the recommendations, then we can get into that. Because if you're just stating in a different way issues that have already been raised, then it means we'll not be moving forward. So Michael will now take the floor, and then after that, we'll come back.
I would like to run through the highlights again so that we can take note just in case. One of the key areas that was mentioned is preserving food heritage. That's a lot of potentials there. The sector of agricultural and food preparation, strengthening the skill of the graduates for entrepreneurship, the age retirement, which you also mentioned, reducing the age of retirement to 55, because it's like, you know, when you look at the system, it's like some of the older ones don't want to retire. They said they are not tired. So I think that's a key area as well. Then change of the entire structure of the curriculum, which one of us here actually said we have to be specific on which areas, which curriculum, which part of the structure are we talking about, so we have to be specific as well. Then dedicating 40% of the annual budget into education of every country. Skill is more important. Skill acquisition, again, skill was actually, again, emphasized. Head of states must respect their commitment at Banjul, 2008, on the African Youth Charter. Quite a number of countries have not even rectified. Now, public and private partnership, better economic governance, ratification of the African Youth Charter again, technical education, training in school, establish more, that the school should establish more, the government should establish more vocational centers, focus on establishing national and regional projects that one of our brothers here said in the case of Kenya, that we have to be in contact with the decision-making bodies and work out a concrete proposal. And most importantly, proposal should be more specific. We should be more specific in our proposal to solve unemployment. Now, focus should be on informal and informal sector because we have more influx of youth. I remember a lady said we have more influx of youth in the informal sector. So focus should be on that. Like our former president said, President Olusegun Obasanjo said, the youth must be participatory and we must engage the political system and structure. So I think it goes beyond all this. I think we actually need to go back and engage, commence the process of engagement with our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a few issues that personally have also jumped up at me. The issue of the informal sector and what we'll do with that. From even presentations this morning, in places like Zambia, we're told over 90% of young people are engaged in the informal sector. How, then if you're thinking at government level, of course we're saying that government cannot do all of it, but they have to also make sure that there are the right structures and systems in place. So how do we address that? Another issue is with regards to capacity within the continent. So for instance, if we're having foreigners build a superhighway in Kenya and we're all excited about it, how do we ensure that 15 years from now, it will be Kenyans who will be building that superhighway and not people from somewhere in Asia or Europe, etc.? How do we ensure that that expertise gets to more Africans? So, I mean, personally, just these two that really jumped at me. And then earlier on also, I think it was the very first speaker who spoke about decent work. So we're of course looking at the issue of employment, but it moves beyond just providing employment to making sure that people have access to decent work. And if you look at the recommendations from the heads of state, from Malabo, Banjul, all of those coming on, you will see that there are clear targets, reducing youth unemployment by 2% every year, etc. But then the issue is how do we do that? And I think that is the main thing that we are all trying to grapple with now. So I'm going to do a quick sweep. I want to believe that many of your issues, oh my goodness, many of your issues have been raised in some form. If you've spoken already, I am usually not going to give you the second chance. I can see two of you sitting next to each other. I have to pick one of you. So, all right. So I'll pick that, the one with his hand still up.
Hello.
I am coming.
You give us the permission before that you took the speech.
Who is speaking?
And you forget us. Tunisia and Angola. Yeah, Tunisia, Angola.
Okay,
yeah.
wait. So let me come.
Oui.
In here we'll pick Cote d'Ivoire and Chad, and trust that the rest will be captured in the other comments. And then from here, just by your sheer persistence, Tunisia,
Ghana, No comment from Ghana.
And Ghana, because we haven't heard much from West Africa. I see a gentleman I know is from Cameroon holding the Angolan plate. If we still have time at the end, we'll pick you. Yeah? So let's start from there. But please, I'm keeping time now, 1 minute.
Employment is not the only factor here for economic growth. There are education experiences and private and business sector support, and combined competencies must be included. My comment is we should come up with a design and method first, which is a combination of different experience, qualifications, and skills. Setup methods help us for aligning employment to our business strategy. So I think we should identify the best practice fit to that particular state so that we can achieve the employment problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Here someplace, Côte d'Ivoire, I believe.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Bonsoir, chers camarades. Je suis Diabaté Mamadou de la Côte d'Ivoire. Bon, moi, ma contribution se situe au niveau du ministère de la Jeunesse. Il y a Andy Roland qui avait dit qu'il souhaiterait qu'on alloue 40% du budget au ministère de la Jeunesse. Moi, je propose comme ça qu'on puisse fusionner, parce qu'on a remarqué que dans la plupart des pays africains, le ministère de la Jeunesse est démarqué du ministère de l'Emploi. Moi, je propose qu'on fusionne ces deux ministères, c'est-à-dire que le ministère de l'Emploi avec le ministère de la Jeunesse, pour qu'on puisse bénéficier des deux budgets. Cela va permettre de renforcer vraiment, de pouvoir régler le problème de l'emploi. Maintenant, au niveau des entreprises, moi je propose que le gouvernement doive privilégier au niveau des appels d'offres des entreprises, privilégier les entreprises qui offrent le plus important ressources en matière de main-d'œuvre. Je m'explique. Je prends l'exemple d'une entreprise, de plusieurs entreprises qui veulent venir répondre à l'appel d'offres. L'entreprise qui vient, qui veut proposer, qui veut souscrire à l'appel d'offres, propose par exemple 1000 emplois. Alors qu'une autre entreprise qui vient, qui propose 3000 emplois. Moi, je souhaiterais qu'on puisse privilégier l'entreprise qui offre le plus important taux d'emploi, de main-d'œuvre. Voilà. Donc, ma troisième contribution se situe au niveau des compétences. On a dit que la majeure partie des jeunes diplômés n'arrivaient pas à avoir un emploi parce qu'il n'y avait pas de débouchés. Donc, ils s'adonnaient à d'autres activités comme la couture, la cordonnerie. Moi, je pense que le gouvernement doit mettre en place un programme de recyclage.
So one of the questions that we have to deal with is who in government is responsible for youth employment. And I think that submission there also speaks to it in terms of what role ministries of youth should be playing. We know that within the AU, for instance, there's the Conference of Ministers in charge of youth. In many of our countries, it's Ministry of Youth and Sports, which is 95% Ministry of Football, maybe 3% other sports, and 2% youth. So how do we ensure that these ministries are actually working on issues directly related to youth development? And maybe it is not just them being merged with employment ministry per se, but they being positioned in such a way that they deal with all the different government ministries from the youth point. So Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Finance. If they're dealing with finance, they need to be making sure that as much of the money is coming to youth development. They're dealing with agriculture, if they're dealing with employment, etc. So that's a very good point. Thank you very much. And then the issue also of the bidding that you were talking about, I think speaks to the public-private partnerships that we're referring to earlier on. Monsieur Lochad.
Merci. Et il n'est pas du tout aisé d'apporter des solutions aux problèmes de la jeunesse. Nous proposons au chef d'État un allègement fiscal. Pour certains, peut-être qui l'ont déjà fait, ne se sentiront pas concernés. Nous proposerons peut-être bien une solution et pour chaque pays, peut-être certaines solutions ne pourront pas du tout apparaître comme étant l'idéal ou bien la solution qui pourrait venir échanger les donnes. Je pense que l'opportunité qui nous est donnée aussi aujourd'hui de rencontrer nos chefs d'État, doit être aussi une chance pour toute la jeunesse de l'Afrique. Nous parlons de dialogue intergénérationnel avec nos chefs d'État, alors que dans beaucoup de pays en Afrique, il y a longtemps que les adultes ont divorcé d'avec la jeunesse. Il n'y a plus de débat entre jeunes et personnes âgées. Nos chefs d'État ont peur de cette jeunesse et évitent toute opportunité de les rencontrer. Je pense que l'opportunité qu'ils nous ont donnée aujourd'hui devrait nous pousser et nous permettre aussi à encourager nos chefs d'État à aller à l'encontre de cette jeunesse. Nous devons recommander à nos chefs d'État de s'engager tous, chacun à organiser dans son pays un forum national tripartite réunissant les jeunes des provinces autant des jeunes des centres-villes avec le secteur privé et puis l'État, afin qu'au niveau de chaque pays, le problème se contextualise et que les solutions soient trouvées et chaque pays sera tenu d'apporter un rapport de ce forum. Nous pourrons les encourager et veiller à ce que ce forum ait lieu. Ainsi, nous aurons également servi à quelque chose auprès de toute la jeunesse qui peut-être ignore que nous sommes là, comme le disait tantôt un de nos amis tout à l'heure. Merci.
Je n'ai pas vraiment eu des nouvelles recommandations pour les chefs d'État de notre continent. J'ai assisté à un dialogue national en Tunisie en 2008 avec notre pays. J'ai assisté beaucoup de dialogues comme ça avec les decision makers, mais je crois qu'on n'a pas encore touché le point fondamental dans notre problème d'emploi. On a dit que l'Afrique, elle a un taux de croissance de 5 ou bien de 6%, mais ça, on ne le voit pas comment il se reflète. Je crois, je peux donner mon analyse pourquoi on ne voit pas ça dans l'emploi. Parce que jusqu'à maintenant, toutes les économies de ce continent, ils sont basées sur le pétrole, le gaz, ou bien sur les services comme le tourisme, comme tout ça, ou bien dans les mines, tout ce qui concerne là, le diamant, je ne sais pas quoi. Et quand je prends tous ces secteurs-là, ils ne sont pas durables. Ça, quand on parle à une économie d'un État, on ne peut pas parler à une durabilité, à une création d'emplois avec ces secteurs-là. Parce que la plupart des pays africains aujourd'hui, ils ont des grands PIB, mais c'est grâce à vendre le pétrole ou bien grâce à vendre le gaz. Comme la Libye, par exemple. On parle à un riche pays, mais enfin, il n'y a pas de réel développement. Alors, pour cela, c'est quoi mon proposition? Mon proposition, c'est que les chefs d'État travaillent ensemble dans les pays voisins et dans leur pays pour qu'ils créent une nouvelle vision à notre économie qui se base sur la recherche scientifique et l'innovation. Parce que si on fait un flashback pour l'Europe, pour les États-Unis, pour tous ces pays-là, oui, ils ont développé leur économie, ils ont créé l'emploi même dans les années 30 avec la fabrication, ou bien l'industrie. On n'industrie pas ici, ça c'est très important. Alors, je crois qu'il faut qu'on travaille ensemble. Je te donne une chose très importante. Par exemple, si je prends le pays du Mauritanie, où il y a 1 million de mètres cubes de carrés dans ce pays, avec 3 millions de personnes. Si je prends par exemple un pays comme l'Égypte, où il y a 90 millions de personnes dans cette superficie-là, si ces deux pays-là travaillent ensemble avec les capacités qui se trouvent dans les deux pays, s'ils font l'échange, on va créer beaucoup d'emplois pour les Égyptiens, par exemple. Même chose si on prend la Libye ou bien on prend l'Algérie ou bien la Tunisie, parce que je connais bien cette région-là. Alors, il faut qu'on travaille ensemble, les pays voisins, pour qu'on crée cet échange solide.
Merci beaucoup. I think you've touched on very important points. One on the issue of jobless growth that I think was touched on quite significantly this morning. We have a very fast-growing continent, but at the same time, the the growth in the economy is not reaching everyone, and it's just as you said, because much of it is concentrated in the oil sector, the mining sector, telecoms, etc. How do we ensure that young people themselves are involved and so on? So I think that's important, and we need to try to keep the time so that we can have as more speakers. Now, I am worried we might not get to Cameroon, but just Ghana.
All right, thank you very much. I think I would want to touch on transfer of labor, in the sense that some of my colleagues made presentations on the fact that there are some countries that people graduate with various kinds of degrees, but they are not able to get jobs to do. Let's take a country, for instance, like Cuba. They don't have problems with production of medical doctors. So what Cuba does is that they produce medical doctors and transfer them across the globe. Now, if you take a country that maybe they produce a lot of business students, people from commerce, people from law, and they are not able to gain employment there because the system over there is choked. Can't our government introduce certain courses like French, Spanish, and even English to make it more easy for these students to be able to transfer to other African countries with ease? Because all the Cuban medics who come to Africa, they have to study English or French, depending on the African country that you are going to. So if we realize that we are producing a chunk of people from a particular sector and they cannot be employed in that particular economy, then I think we need to add a second language to our educational institutions so that they can be able to transfer labor across African countries. The next thing that I would like to also touch on is the system of open university. Open university, as has been said already, most of the people are not employed, the youth, have not had the opportunity of being educated, right? You take a country like India, where they have a lot of youth who have the technical know-how, but unfortunately do not have the academic knowledge. What they do is that they have open universities where these students these people are taught basic skills like mathematics, arithmetic, English, so that they are able to complement it with what they have. Because you bear me out that there are people who have the technical know-how, but they don't have the academic knowledge. But more or less, they are also doing a lot. So if we can have an open university system which can cater for those in the informal sector who are doing very well so that they can build up on their experience. The last thing I will talk about is counseling, which I believe might have been touched on. One of the very important personalities who inspires me a lot is Bill Gates, and then also the founder of Facebook, right? What these people did was that they were able to move beyond the academic qualification and work on their passion. So I think that if we have systems in the institutions that can identify people with their passion, then we can help to promote most of these guys in the various institutions. If not so, we'll be producing graduates out of convenience, but they will not be able to get jobs on the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
I think Cameroon was coming at some point. Thank you.
Okay, but I'm going to be very strict. Please sum it up in 1 minute.
Okay.
Because we have 15 minutes, I'm told, to wrap up this session, and we are nowhere near
1 minute may be tough, and what I'm touching on hasn't been raised. Someone mentioned on decent employment. I think that hinges on wages, the wage rate. We've talked about doctors being trained and leaving, and engineers and all of that. It's because of how much they are paid. You pay people poorly, they would leave. Any of us in this hall wouldn't work when they don't think it's decent enough. I think it's true for anybody. So we should talk about decent employment. In Cameroon, the minimum wage rate is $60. It's ridiculous. Even the minister who signed that doesn't live on that amount a day. It's something to take seriously. What's the minimum wage rate? That's my first point. The second point would do with how governments can employ. Someone talked about 40% for budgets for youth ministries. I would go with President Kenyatta. Youth ministries may be relevant, but are they, youths work in every sector. It's not like...
I think the recommendation was 40% for education spending.
Oh, education spending. Sorry, I got it wrong. But again, what I think is one of the places where the government can really employ large numbers, and if not every citizen, is the military. This is one thing to touch on, because you can always argue that you need to enforce your security, but you should be able to employ like the US does, where people are not forced to be in the military for life. You get into the military, you have military doctors, military engineers. It's a good excuse to train people, absorb people into the system, give them the right skills, and then later on they can move into the private sectors or wherever they want to go. But the military is one of those places when you argue with donors, you always get people in. That's my second point. My third point touches on youths in politics. It is important to get to walk that talk. If we do not get involved, we will keep giving recommendations and finding no results. It's time to move into those local politics and make sure we get elected. If we don't get into parliament, we don't get into councils, we're wasting time, because if the young people are not in power, there is no way that things will change for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry that I had to rush you. The issue of skills transfer that you mentioned, and I know that, for instance, the AU started the AU Youth Volunteer Corps, which I think is along the same thinking. But then that has to definitely be scaled up to involve many, many more young people. The issue of the investments that we have to do now, for those of you who were here in September, October, we were talking about harnessing the demographic dividend, and all that talk was about the fact that we have a youthful continent, youthful in the sense that a good proportion are young now. We are having increased access to education, healthcare, etc., and very soon our population structure is going to be such that those in the productive ages are going to be more than those below or above them. And if all the right investments are made now in education, in health, in employment, etc., then we'll be positioning our continent to benefit from a demographic dividend. So I think it is important to also, just keep that in perspective. Now, how do we wrap this up? I shall hand over now to Obin again, to just touch on a few issues that he has noted. If you agree, I think a good way to go about this would be that during the coffee break, we will sit together briefly and look at the issues, because even when they first shared their notes, we saw that there was still a lot of overlap between the two, and then that could help us to hone down the recommendations a bit. I'm not sure we'll get strictly 2 or 3 per theme, but then at least we would have moved a lot closer to bringing some focus to the discussion. There have been a lot of recommendations, some more radical than others, lowering the age of retirement to 55 and putting everyone in the military and stuff. But hopefully within all of those, we can find some common ground on recommendations that we can take forward. So, Oben.
Je pense que beaucoup de recommandations qui sont revenues mettent l'accent sur le renforcement des compétences et également la promotion de l'entrepreneuriat juvénile. Et l'autre recommandation, c'est de renouer avec le dialogue intergénérationnel. Et la personne qui avait proposé cela soulevait la question de la peur. En réalité, c'était comme si les générations qui sont avant nous ont peur de nous. Ils ont peur peut-être que nous concourions avec eux, et je pense que c'est beaucoup plus pour des engagements politiques dont ils ont peur. Et en liaison à cela, il y a beaucoup qui ont également insisté sur l'engagement politique. Il va falloir que les jeunes puissent également participer à l'action politique et à l'action publique. L'autre recommandation, et je pense que je vais m'en arrêter là, c'est par rapport à la recherche scientifique. Voilà, il va falloir, comme tous les États qui se sont développés l'ont fait, il va falloir insister sur la recherche. Parce que les problèmes africains ne sont pas les mêmes que les problèmes européens. Et il va falloir trouver des solutions africaines aux problèmes africains. Et cela passe par la recherche scientifique. Et pour finir, la question de l'intégration est revenue. Donc il va falloir vraiment se consacrer à l'intégration d'abord internationale, je veux dire, enfin, entre les États, interétatiques, et pourquoi pas au niveau continental. Donc renforcer cela. Ça existe déjà, mais bon, il faut le renforcer. Bon, au-delà de tout ça, moi-même, j'ai quand même des propositions à faire. Peut-être que ça ne sera pas partagé. Mais, donc, il va falloir que je les fasse. Je pense, nous avons discuté beaucoup plus ici de partenariat privé et tout, mais si l'environnement, non seulement institutionnel et politique, n'est pas favorable, ils ne peuvent pas venir. C'est-à-dire les entreprises, dans leur tête, ce qu'il y a, c'est de maximiser leurs profits, c'est de réaliser des profits. Et en dehors de tout cela, il faut un certain préalable pour que les entreprises puissent venir. Et je pense que nous n'avons pas suffisamment discuté de ça. Je vais parler des infrastructures. Et le gouvernement, en réalité, ce n'est pas le gouvernement qui crée l'emploi. Le gouvernement se charge juste de créer un cadre favorable. Et ce que moi j'appelle cadre favorable, c'est autour des infrastructures qui incluent quoi? L'énergie, qui incluent les routes et qui incluent aujourd'hui l'Internet. Donc je pense qu'il faut que l'Afrique puisse avoir une politique commune ou régionale, donc en faisant allusion au RECT, qu'on puisse avoir des politiques de développement de ces infrastructures-là, premièrement. Deuxièmement, ça s'oriente exclusivement aux jeunes, c'est de réellement créer un fonds dédié à l'emploi des jeunes et qui est géré avec la transparence nécessaire. Parce que nous connaissons des fonds qui existent, mais qui ne sont pas gérés comme il le faut. Ou donc des problèmes de partisanat politique donc, entre là-dedans. Et puis, pour finir, pour développer l'entrepreneuriat africain, c'est-à-dire pour que les hommes d'affaires africains puissent émerger, il va falloir protéger un tout petit peu le marché africain. C'est vrai que nous sommes à l'aide de la mondialisation, à l'aide de la globalisation, mais il va falloir quand même prendre des mesures, même si ce n'est pas des mesures tarifaires, qu'on puisse réfléchir à des mesures non tarifaires pour pouvoir protéger quelque peu les entreprises africaines pour qu'ils se développent à partir de l'Afrique et compétir dans le monde entier. Je pense que c'est des recommandations personnelles que moi-même j'ai et qui peuvent être partagées comme non. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Oben. So we have discussed quite extensively, and I think if you look at your agenda for the different aspects of the issues that we're supposed to look at under both government policies and employability, we have to a great extent addressed various issues under each of these. Now, one of the things we were hoping to do was to structure things in such a way that at the end we'll have concrete recommendations that we are making to governments on what we want them to do or to change or improve, concrete recommendations to the private sector, and then recommendations to us young people as well on what we can do, because there is a lot that we expect government to do. Of course, they have the lion's share of the responsibility to reduce youth unemployment and underemployment, but we as young people also have the ability to do a lot of things. A few months ago, we were sitting here in this very room with a young person from Kenya who developed the mobile money transfer, for instance. And in many of our countries, that has taken, you know, us by storm, that you can sit in the capital and send money to your grandmother in the rural areas. And it took a young person to do this. So we do have a lot to contribute to ourselves directly, our comparative advantage with access to new media, ICT, etc. So how can we take that forward? Also looking at the issues of youth fund, this I think has been raised in so many different consultations that have been held around the issue of youth employment. How do we create a youth fund that will not only provide access to credit for young people, but also provide the opportunity to give them some kind of mentorship to start their businesses and grow them? How do we ensure that every young person has an equal opportunity to tap into these youth funds so that in country A, it doesn't become a youth fund for young people who belong to the party of the ruling government only, but every young person with a good idea will have an opportunity to access these funds and be able to grow their business. Then there was the issue of the informal sector, and I think tied to that also, technical vocational education and training. So many fall out of the formal educational system. Many of them end up as barbers, as we were told, and as shoemakers, as farmers, etc. How are we ensuring that we are able to give them the capacity to reach their fullest potential? So that's extremely important. Now, when you come to the issue of education, we've spoken about improving access to education so that young people, whether or not they are in the capital or the rural area, have access to education, whether or not they have a disability, that they have access to education. Now, once they have access to the education, we've also said that that education has to be of high quality. It has to be relevant to the needs of the country, national development priorities, position them to be competitive in the job market, so that we do not have the same concern we've been having for a long time, where we have, in some countries like mine, an association of graduate unemployed students. Unemployed Graduates Association. You know, we don't want the existence of such groups. So that's an extremely important thing. The issue of funding for education. And again, I think we're going to keep this at increased funding for education. And this is just my recommendation that I'm making quite strongly, because if you say 40% or 50%, you need to be coming at that with some very strong technical analysis on why that percentage. I think what we need really is to have much more spending on education. UNESCO has made a recommendation of 8% minimum, and I think we can encourage our governments to go beyond that. But even that 8%, I don't know how many of our countries are spending 8% on education. So jumping from that to 40% usually would be a way for them to just brush aside our recommendations. So I think we can take on board that we need increased spending on education, eliminating costs directly to students. So when you look at even the issue of spending on education, there is a part where the state is providing school buildings, furniture, textbooks, teachers, etc. And then there's the other aspect about tuition fees and things like that. So I think you need to look at it on both sides. How do we ensure that, you know, one government is spending more on education, but also eliminating direct costs for students so that they on themselves can spend on other things? And how do we, there was also the issue of data, which I think was raised. Do we have the right data that is telling us what we need to know about the state of youth unemployment in our countries? So that's another aspect that we really need to look at. And last but not the least has been the issue of ratification of various charters at the continental level and their implementation also at country level. So one, we want to ensure that, for instance, all our countries have ratified the African Youth Charter and any other charter that speaks directly to the issue of youth development. But beyond that, they need to implement it. And so we need to look at our ways that we can help monitor the implementation and push with advocacy for implementation of these charters at country level. How do we engage with the national development planning process? Do we know the cycle of our national development plan, the medium-term development framework, the longer term? If you're in Kenya, the Vision 2030 and the medium-term framework. If you're in Ghana, the Shared Growth Development Agenda. If you're in Nigeria, the needs, Nigeria Economic Empowerment Development Strategy, and so on. We all have these in our countries, whether it's a poverty reduction strategy paper or it's, you know, just a country development plan. Do we know how to engage with these structures to ensure that these issues that we are raising are prioritized in the national budgets, in the country's development plan? So this is just a brief way of saying that we've raised all these different issues, and I think we've started grouping them. If we can just agree that these are the main issues that we've raised. Oh, and last but not the least, there was the issue of health and African heritage, food and culinary exchanges, etc. And I'm saying these from the notes from the two rapporteurs that I've picked, and other things that I also picked. South Africa, is that a signal that I've left out something? Can you briefly tell us what it is then?
We have addressed predominantly the consequences of an economic system as opposed to trying to deal with the source itself. And I'll make two examples because of limited time. Number one, in Africa, the wealth is created collectively and consumed privately by the few. So if we're going to address any educational, health, or any kind of social challenge, we need to not only create an inclusive economy, but transform it fundamentally so that we can generate the terms and conditions of how our economy functions.
How?
I'll tell you just now. I'll give you an example of mining as an example of how. I live in a country whereby we mine coal in South Africa, and then coal companies sell it to Eskom, which escalates the cost of electricity to South Africans. But the very same coal is mined in South Africa. That's because South Africans don't own their own coal, which is under their own soil. So that it means that the cost of education, the cost of health, or any other product that has everything to do with electricity is shaped because of who owns our economy. So we can't ask anything from our government if our government do not own the means of production and the minerals that are beneath our soil. Anything else you want to deal that has to do with money has to be fundamentally changed from below. But lastly, we can say increase spending in higher education. The fact of the matter is that basic education upgrades you to exploitable levels. But if you see around our continent, higher education which produces the skills that allow you to be employable and also increase your entrepreneurial capacity has been commoditized, and we almost now buy education or higher education as a product in the shops, which means higher education is now for the privileged few and the lucky few. It's not possible that we'll develop Africa in any way. So education in the whole of Africa, universities must be free. That's what we must tell our presidents. How is it possible that in South Africa, you've got the biggest platinum producers in the world, but in that very same town, there's not a single mining college in that particular area. So let's be frank about it. The private sector continues to be exploitative with our continent, and let's confront it head on and not dilly-dally around the issue.
Okay, so thank you very much. I hear what you're saying, and I think what we did we didn't go into the details of the progressive levels of education and the spending on each of those, and we're just looking at education in a whole, but you want to make an even stronger emphasis on tertiary education, a specific focus on tertiary education. So that's important. The issue of owning the local sources of production, as you call it, is also important. I guess it's a very big issue that we need to keep discussing on as well. So I've taken those on board. At this point, let's see, time check. We are about 5 minutes over time. I think we can wrap up at this point. Thank you all so much for your contributions. It has been a very interesting exchange. But as you know, we knew from the beginning that we were not going to finalize the discussion on youth unemployment in this 1.5 hours. So the discussion continues, and let's keep discussing, and hopefully by the end of this process, we would have moved closer to the targets and the objectives that we've set for ourselves than when we started. Thank you very much, and have a nice coffee break. We are back in here at 4:30 for the plenary. Thank you.